Okay, right, so here we are, and what the heck is this all about? Well, I had a thought the other day. I had a thought about all of the old tech that existed, and it was all to do with the fact that I found an old phone, etc., etc. Never throw anything away, obviously, and it got me thinking. When you look back at the old content, the old photos, the old videos, and everything that you took, some of them, the quality is a bit dubious. And I think what it is I think that at the end of the day, what you were using was probably the best you could afford. Either the best that was available or the best that you could afford. So if you sort of scroll forwards to the current day, and I'm doing this in 2024, everything's 4K, everything's 60 frames a second or 120 frames a second. You know, some things are even 8K. It's crazy, crazy. And the quality that you can get out of these bits of kit is phenomenal, you know, and it kind of begs the question to me is, what are we actually trying to achieve? And there was two things, in my view. So what we're trying to do is, first one, we're trying to get the best memory, the best representation of what we are seeing, experiencing. Yep, so there's that kind of thing. And obviously you want to use the best type of kit to capture that, no problem. The other side of things is that you want to create an artistic, you want to create something, you want to create an artistic piece of something or other. And you're using the same kit, you know, and indeed, if you look at all the stuff on the phones to do with, like on Instagram and the likes, you know, and Snapchat, all of the different filters you can get to make things look old, new, whatever else. You know, that's clearly the tools that people are using. But it got me thinking, why don't we use the old tools as an artistic tool? So rather than thinking about it as I'm trying to capture stuff, the best quality, and in that view, obviously using the old tools, you know, why would you do that? Because, you know, if that's your view, you can use new tools. But if you're trying to use them as a method to create something different, that is quite interesting, I think. And that is what I am trying to do. So what am I doing? We already covered that. Why are we doing it? We're going to cover that in more detail a bit later on. How am I doing it? Right, well, okay, let's start with that. So in terms of video, what I'm doing, and this is being recorded on a 20-year-old Sony Handycam camcorder thing. They were quite popular back in the day, 20 years ago. So it's going on to mini-DV tapes, tiny little tapes. I was going to say about the size of a matchbox, but that's not really a thing these days, is it? Anyway, small things being recorded sort of in digital / analog type of thing. So that's what I'm going to use for this. Yeah, just because I think it's an interesting view of stuff. Photographs, I'm going to use a 25-year-old digital camera, which actually, it's not really the camera, it's like a lens, and it clips into what's called a PDA. We're going to cover that. And between the two of them, we're going to try to create some interesting stuff. That's the point. We're going to create some interesting stuff. And I'm going to talk about what stuff is a bit later, okay? Right, so I was talking about how I was going to do the photo stuff, and we already know this is being recorded on a 20-year-old camera. So I thought I would talk about briefly photos. Right, so what we have here is a Kodak PalmPix device, and it's just the camera. So there's the lens, it's just the camera, and over here, this is the connector part, okay? And the way in which this works, it runs on 2 AAA batteries. Obviously, there's no viewfinder here at all. So how the heck does it work? What you do is you connect it to this little thing here. So this is a PDA. So this is kind of like the smartphone without the phone stuff that was quarter of a century ago. So what we do is this has got a it's got a stylus and stuff like that. Okay, we're not going to use the stylus, we're just going to use our fingers. So there's an app that goes with this. Okay, So what we do is we first of all connect it together. So there's a connector here which goes to there, makes a reassuring sound. There we go, snap together. And then what we have is we have sort of the unit here. So this is the lens, obviously, and then what happens is that when you switch it on, this becomes the viewfinder. Now, the fantastic bit of creativity, so to speak, is that this device is black and white. It's actually 4 colors. It's grayscale. It's 4 colors. So we're only ever going to get a black and white interpretation of what this is seeing. Now, the other thing is remember, this is 25 years old, as I keep saying. So the refresh rate is about 5 frames a second, maybe 2 frames a second. And as we'll see, the quality is, well, why don't I just show you? So what we're going to do is we're going to switch it on. Okay. And and we're going to start the app, because I don't know why I'm showing that, you can't see it. Okay. And we're going to press this button here. So we press that. And then what I can see now is an interpretation. What we're going to do is if I turn this around, you should be able to see it's very reflective. You can probably see that thing moving around. That is the screen. Okay. So what I'll do, I'll take a photo of you if you don't mind. So we're going to take this here and we are going to press that button. Okay. So it takes the photo, and at the bottom here, there's a progress meter. So that is where the single photo is transferring from here to here, where it gets stored. Okay. And you get about, there we go, photo's done. So what do we get out of that? Well, we get a fantastic 0.3 megapixel image, which is 640 by 480 pixels. So most cameras now are kind of 20 megapixels, even greater, you know, much higher, up to 48 megapixels, I think, these days. So this is tiny, tiny, tiny. And also remember that this lens here, the quality of the sensor and the fidelity of the sensor and what this can actually pick up is not very good anyway. So what you end up with is kind of an impression of what was there. Sure, you can make out what stuff's going on. It's got quite a bit of a green distortion because I think of the sort of the quality of the sensor in here. It was just a thing back then. So you end up with an impression of what was going on. And I think that's actually quite interesting because sometimes sort of when you pull back, it looks vaguely okay. But as soon as you zoom in to anything, you start to see kind of the smudginess, you know, like trees, you know, with leaves on a tree. That's great and everything. But what you end up with is you end up with sort of a smudgy kind of Monet almost-esque type interpretation of what the trees look like, which I kind of like. The other really interesting thing is at night time, in low light, I mean, you can absolutely forget that. It's an absolute train wreck. It just can't pick up the quality of the image. So those ones, interestingly, you get loads of artifacts, loads of dots and everything. If you convert those to black and white just by removing the saturation, it's actually, you end up with something that's sort of okay. So I'll just put on the photo that we took, and you'll also be able to see the extravagant setup that I have here on the camera, where I've had to attach it to the screen, the windscreen, because I'm in a car, obviously, because why wouldn't I be in a car, via some suction cups, and then turn the camera upside down and then shoot this. Okay, so I'll have to flip the image, rotate the image when I bring it back. Now, I should say something. I'm using 20-year-old camera, 25-year-old still camera to do all of this stuff. What I'm not doing is I'm not using the microphones in the camera. The reason is that the way in which those work, they put the microphones in the device and they are really quite close to the mechanics, the engine. You know, there's a tape actually turning here with motors and stuff. So you end up with a bit of background noise. So what I've decided to do is I'm using a separate wireless mic here. and we'll just use that instead, because I think sound, I mean, come on, you know, you can put up with dodgy photos and dodgy picture, but dodgy sound, that's not too good. Anyway, right, so we'll just see how this new thing of stuff actually turns out. Who knows?